At Deeper Walk, we want to help you identify and overcome the obstacles to a deeper walk with God. Welcome, I'm Stephanie, and we are so excited to be launching our summer study. Over the next 10 weeks, we are going to be going chapter by chapter through the book, A Deeper Walk. We invite you to read along with us, and this video is session 1. So we'll be going through chapter 1, and we also encourage you check out the free downloadable guide in the description below. Enjoy the video.
When I was in seminary, we had a guest speaker come to the class and ask the question, if the church was a factory, what would its product be? It was a good question. We had a lively discussion around it and came to an obvious conclusion. That is that Jesus had told us the mission of the church. Go and make disciples of all nations. Because of this, most local churches have some variation of these words as their mission statement for the church. It also tells us that if the church is a factory, its product would be disciples. So that means that what we're supposed to be doing in our churches is we go and we reach people for Christ and we lead them into a process called discipleship. But what is this process? What does it mean to be a disciple? What does this process need to look like? Well, one of the problems we run into is we ask this question, if the church is a factory and if its product is disciples, how are we doing, right? Are we satisfied with the quality of product that the church is making? If surveys are any indication, then we've got a pretty serious issue, because the last survey I saw said that 9% of evangelical Christians lived with a biblical worldview, that biblical illiteracy was rampant among people who had spent their whole lives in church. Not only the knowledge of the Bible was low, but also the value system that by which people were living had more in common with the world than it did with the kingdom. So we have a crisis going on in our churches when it comes to discipleship, and we need to take a closer look at this. In fact, a few years ago, a study came out from Willow Creek Association called the Reveal Study, and it revealed that a lot of churches are struggling to produce mature disciples. And so the question becomes, well, why? What is the problem here? And I think it's because we've been using traditional discipleship, a traditional method. Now, what do I mean by this? A traditional approach to discipleship has tended to be very left-brained. Because of that, it produces what I would call half-brained Christians. That is, Christians who think well, they make good decisions now and then, but there is something missing relationally and emotionally, that they are lacking relational and emotional maturity. And so we see a lot of people who look spiritually mature, but they are lacking the kind of relational and emotional maturity that would say, wow, that's what it looks like to be a follower of Christ. Something's got to change. So let's start by looking at the problem. What is traditional discipleship? Why does it create half-brain Christianity? What's going on here? So first of all, I think a lot of churches struggle to even do discipleship, and they practice something I would call discipleship by osmosis. Now, osmosis you may think of as like when putting a textbook under your pillow at night and hoping the information just sort of osmoses into your head. Well, the same way, discipleship by osmosis happens when people assume that I've been in church a long time, I must have been discipled. And there's a lot of leaders who even assume that because someone is very active and involved in church, that means they're being discipled. It works kind of like this. It's like if I, attend church long enough, I'm going to get asked to serve. And once I become a volunteer, if I serve faithfully, right, in a couple of years, I might get asked to lead. And if I'm a faithful leader for a period of time, I may actually become an elder in my church without ever actually being discipled. I'm just faithful. People know they can count on me to get things done. That's not the same thing. I've talked to many people through the years who have actually become elders in their churches. They've gone into ministry and they thought they'd been discipled, only to find out there was some huge holes in their walk with God that they didn't know how to fill. Like there is something broken in this discipleship factory, because traditional discipleship, being as left-brain focused, as half-brain focused as it is, tends to create people who look good on the outside, but who are still struggling on the inside, who don't feel that connected with God. And because of that, they are struggling with their emotions, they're struggling in their relationships, because the type of spiritual maturity they're pursuing has been defined by traditional discipleship. See, when you look at maturity from a traditional point of view, you say, I must be academically informed, right? I know the Bible well, I know my theology, I know some apologetics. That must mean I'm mature. Or my behavior is good. I avoid a lot of the bad behaviors that I see out in the world, so I must be mature. Or I'm very involved in my church and I'm very active. And you put all those things together and people assume that means you're a mature Christian. When we think about what it means to be mature, it is directly related to the idea of enduring hardship well. In fact, there are 5 levels of maturity. Infants don't handle hardship at all, right? It takes very little hardship for an infant to be overwhelmed. In fact, somebody else has to meet them in their upset emotions and help them recover. They can't do it themselves. So the challenge comes, like if I start off as an infant when I never developed those skills, I can find myself 50, 60, 70 years old and I still function like an emotional infant. And that is that somebody else has to meet me in my emotional upset and help me recover because those skills have never been developed. So I don't endure hardship well. At the child level, I am learning how to take care of one person. That is, I'm learning to take care of myself. So other people are helping me put words to my emotions. They're helping me learn the skills of quieting myself from upset emotions so that by the time I become an adult, right around 13 years of age, by the time I enter into that time period, I should be pretty well practiced at returning to joy from upset emotions. This is what it looks like to endure hardship well. I remain relational, I act like myself, I return to joy from upsetting emotions. But if I get to age 13, I start entering into those adult years after puberty, and I haven't developed these skills, it's going to be really hard to learn them later. But that's the journey that a lot of us are on, and that is how do we repair and replace the skills that we have missed so that we can function with emotional and relational maturity. Now, here we go, infant, child, the next stage is adult. Adult level Christians are people who are walking in the Spirit in such a way that they have learned how to take care of not only themselves, but there's enough for me and there's some to share with you too. I can take care of two people at the same time. I think in terms of my group and what is best for my people and not just what is best for me, right? These are characteristics of adult level maturity. Then when we get into the parent stage, right, spiritual parents are those who recognize infants and can help the infants become children and the children become adults, and they're good at passing on the skills. So our churches need spiritual parents who are good at passing on these skills to the infants of the children in our congregations. An elder, according to this way of thinking, an elder is somebody who has been parenting people for a long time. They've been passing on these skills for a long time. So when they look at the community and they see the holes in the community, they're good at actually shepherding whole communities. They're good at parenting the community itself. And so these 5 levels help us to think about it. Am I at a stage where I need somebody else to do everything for me? If so, that's infant level spiritual maturity. Am I at a stage where I am learning to do things for myself? Well, that's child level spiritual maturity. Am I at a point where I can take care of myself and I can, live in a group and we do things well collectively? That's adult level maturity. Am I at the point where I have been doing this long enough I can pass it on to somebody else? Parent level maturity. And if I've been parenting others long enough and I'm ready now to help to run the community, that's elder level maturity. But mature discipleship is not defined just by these traditional categories. We have to look at something deeper. We've got to be looking for something that I call heart-focused discipleship. Now, heart-focused discipleship is something that looks at what is going on inside. How do I connect with God in a way that is making a transformed reality on what's going on inside my heart? So how do we do this? What does this look like? So the remainder of this study, we're actually going to be unpacking a model that I call the fish model. And this model is anchored in the gospel. So it's a gospel-based approach to discipleship, and it deals with issues of the heart. So before we get there, though, let me look at a closer definition of what does maturity mean from a heart-focused perspective. And I look at it this way, that if traditional discipleship produces half-brain Christians who are very left-brain, heavy, then heart-focused discipleship produces not right-brain, half-brain Christians, but it produces whole-brain Christians. That is, people who have strong relational and emotional skills, as well as strong knowledge skills and behavior skills. And I look at this and I'm like, this is what God wanted. When we go back to the Bible and we say, what does the Bible say is a mature Christian? When we look at the scripture, what does a mature believer look like? I don't think there's any better place we can go than this fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit, if you think about it, is like love is the fruit of the Spirit. There's nothing more relational and emotionally mature than love. Then it goes on to joy and peace, which are also emotional, relational maturity words. It goes on to self-control, right, and kindness. And you go through the whole list, and they all have something to do with emotional and relational maturity. And so I'm looking at all of this and saying our discipleship model, our discipleship factory is broken because we have been using a traditional model of discipleship that is heavy on the left brain and misses the right brain. And what we want is whole brain Christianity. So in the coming sessions, we're going to be taking a deeper look at what that model is all about, how it applies to you, and how it can make a difference in your life. So I hope you'll join me on this journey as we go deeper in our walk with God.
Hey there. Next week, we're continuing this study with session 2, which is actually going to be unique in that we're covering not 1, but 2 chapters. It's the only week we're going to be doing that. So come prepared as we invite you to read along with chapters 2 and 3 for this session. And I also just want to stop and say thank you to every donor who made it possible to offer this study for free. You were epic. God bless you all. We'll see you back next week.